Denim Couch Podcast. Ooh, whoa, ooh, whoa.
The 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s with Steph with an F.
Hi guys, welcome to the Denim Couch Podcast, where we chill on this denim couch and talk about the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. I'm Stephanie Tanner. Welcome. Hey guys, it's Stephanie Tanner with the Denim Couch Podcast. And today's episode is the 60s recap. And I'd like to just cover what I learned from the 60s and all of the guests that we had and just a summary of what they had to say, who they are, and what their life was like. Which is awesome because if you haven't yet listened to their stories, maybe that'll spark up some interest for certain people. It's so interesting going through these decades because I feel very different than I did when I had the 40s and 50s recap. I felt like the 40s and 50s was very fun, and the people that I interviewed were wonderful and mean a lot to me, and I feel like I built some awesome friendships and heard some incredible stories. And, really the goal with this whole podcast is to compare the difference back then and now. And there's many, many differences, but as you can probably now tell, if you've listened to a few episodes, my focus is more on the effects of social media in our lives today versus not having social media back then. I know there's, lots of social issues and many issues that we have overcome or are still working on overcoming, and we've come a long way in many aspects of society, and we've also downgraded in some aspects of society. So recap is not a full account of the positive changes and the negative changes from the 60s to today. Its focus is definitely on overall happiness and the connection of happiness with social media and technology. So that being said, the funny thing is to me is that when I asked the question, how would you compare your teenage years or childhood years to today's kids? Most of the time this sparks something to do with technology or social media and today's people's involvement with it. I find that interesting, and also, the whole reason I am doing this is because I have just wanted to hear from other people and see if they did see a difference in their childhood or, their time in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and if they do see a difference in society and how that may be affecting us now. And they do. And each person I interview kind of confirms that. And so personally for me, this project is to have that so ingrained in my mind so that I have enough self-control, because I know this social media aspect of my life may not be good for me. I want that to be so ingrained in my mind. Interviewing these people has given me many ideas of what a life can look like without social media and how we can bring aspects of that and what we used to do before social media came around. We can bring aspects of that back into our life. And basically, I'm just trying to really pound that in my system enough so that I have enough self-control to know exactly what I want out of social media and not let it control my life. That's kind of my goal here. And also share all the wonderful, wonderful experiences with those who listen. Alrighty, so I did not think much of the 60s other than the big hairstyles and the shift dresses and the boots. That is what I thought of when I thought of the 60s previously. I, may have thought of the movie Hairspray, and oddly enough, I was watching Across the Universe one of these weeks while I was interviewing 60s people. And I was like, yeah, Across the Universe is a huge focus on the 60s. Like the music, the Beatles music, the clothing, the lifestyle, the social issues, the war, all of that was, for the most part, spot on from what I hear. And as I was watching it, I was like, wow, this movie has a whole new meaning for me. And I enjoyed it much more knowing more backstory on the 60s. So that was cool. Hairspray, the dancing is the biggest thing that came from these interviews. Almost every single person said that dancing was just what you did. And they had community dances, school dances every Friday. They were so common. And this just, it doesn't surprise me, but it's crazy to me that people were so willing to dance, because now it is so hard to get a group of people to dance unless it's a school function. But even then, getting those boys to dance was really hard. But that's what they like to do. And what a better way to connect than to dance with people. And I mean, it's fun. It is so fun. I wish I could join a dancing club or do something like that every week. Sadly, my husband does not and will not dance. So good luck to me on that one. They all enjoyed it and wanted to do it. I think society back then just built a lot more connection, and they did it through dance, and people wanted that. They didn't want to isolate themselves. They wanted to come together and dance and celebrate. And that the other big takeaway from all of these interviews was the war. Vietnam vets, I was surprised at how many of the people I interviewed actually participated in the Vietnam War. And I say this because people don't advertise it. And these are men I've known for a long time. Most of them I've known for years. And I had no idea that some of them served in the Vietnam War. And that makes me sad, because I wish I could show them gratitude for that, and I have now. It's also a really tough subject for most people who lived in this time and who served in the war. So I think Frank was the one who was able to give us the most detail on this, and he was so very kind to, and I'm so grateful that he was able to. I know that is a really tough thing to share. And the biggest surprise for me was I did not know that people didn't celebrate the troops and thank them for their service because the war was so frowned upon. They came home and it was like a disappointment. When people went to war, World War II and World War I, they came back. They were thanked and they were celebrated. These men weren't. They not only did they go through a crazy war and serve and sacrifice their lives, their homecoming was nothing like it was for people who served before and after. I'm just really grateful for these men. These men are some of the best men I know. They're just exceptional people. All right, so I'm just going to go through a short overview of all the wonderful people that I got to interview through the 60s. Our first guest was Gay Gunderson, and one thing that stuck out with Gay is that she just praised her mother and father the whole entire interview, and you can just see the love that she has for her family and her brothers, and what a great support her brothers were, and how fun would that be, even though they teased and got her into trouble occasionally. She had a great support system, and her brothers were awesome. And I just am really impressed with how much respect she has for her mother and father, and definitely look up to that. I think if everyone had the same amount of respect for their mothers and fathers that Gay Gunderson does, this world would be such a better place. Of course, Gay is a flirt, and I love Gay so much. She has been a definite joy in my life and keeps me on my toes. I loved how they would watch movies on the roof of their house because the movie theater was just down the road and they could see the screen from their house, and they would turn the radio to the station that the movie house used, and they would just watch movies from their house. What an ideal childhood. And she would go swimming with her friends all the time, and I loved how her and her friend would meet up. They would ride their horses to their meetup spot in, I think it was Nampa. Her episode was definitely one of the most entertaining, and I'm so grateful that she was able to showcase her personality, because her personality is so incredible. Alice was our next guest, and I remember the orange juice can hairstyle really stood out to me. That surprised me. I have never heard of that. It makes sense, but I would like a tutorial on how to do that successfully. One thing that stood out with Alice is that she actually learned to play piano at a later age, which impresses me because I grew up taking piano lessons. I can read notes and I can play, but I'm not good. And so I just love that she had the motivation to learn this after she had kids. I actually want to do this now. That was impressive. And she still takes lessons. I think that is incredible. She's mastering a skill and has continued to master it throughout the years. That is just so cool to me. The other thing that stood out is she actually got to see the Beatles in concert. Oh man, I mean, talk about a cool memory. And when I think of the 60s, I think of the Beatles. And the last thing that stood out to me for Alice is her fun love story. I love a good love story, and I love what a tease she is. So I recall her saying that when Jim was at their friend's house and he had said her name wrong, and so she purposefully said his name wrong after he saw that she had a Montana suitcase in her room. It was also cool when Jim was our next guest, because Jim and Alice are married, and he had a lot of love for Montana. He grew up in Montana, and I've been to Montana once, and it is the most beautiful state in my opinion. It's just so colorful and so beautiful, and it's not populated. It is incredible. So I loved hearing his outdoor stories of building canoes and just spending most of the time outdoors. And he talked a lot about his parents and what the older folks did in the 60s, and that was pretty cool. They also went to boxing matches in Butte. His parents went to boxing matches, and he said his mother really loved wrestling. So I just think this household would have been a really active and fun place to be. He also talked about how he felt like, or he feels like, his life wasn't really planned out for him, whereas nowadays kids' lives are planned out for them a lot of times, or there's expectations of what they're supposed to do. He said they just did what they felt like doing, and there wasn't pressure, and they could decide what they wanted to major in college, and in his case, at least, he felt like he had less pressure to be a certain someone, do certain things. And he said, his family didn't pressure him and society didn't pressure him. And that could be also that he was from Montana, but I do find that interesting. All right, Parker Sheehan. Parker is the sweetest person ever. I loved how he told me the story about his kids doing piano duets. And they've done that for a long time. And he said that when they get together, I think on holidays, his son and daughter will play a beautiful duet on the piano together. And he said that's one of his favorite memories. And I just think about my future children or just my siblings and how loving and awesome that would be if we did duets on the piano. It has not happened yet. I don't know if it will ever happen. But the thought of it is so sweet and wholesome, and I love it. So talking with Parker, I just envisioned his childhood like the Sandlot. His life was the Sandlot. So what they did in every single day of their childhood was play baseball and then go swimming afterwards, come home for dinner, and play night games at night. A life could not get better than that. I'm kind of sad that it's not more common that kids just go out on the weekends and play baseball together or go outside. And I think the thing I'm saddest about is that I don't think many kids play night games anymore either because of safety concerns. But, all the neighborhood kids, Jim said it, Alice said it, everyone so far has said that they did night games, and all the kids in the neighborhood would get together and they'd play Red Rover or tossing a ball over the house or just any type of game. And this was after dinner. They'd all get together and play and, get to know the people in their neighborhood and people in their community and form really close friendships through that type of thing. I think that is so cool, and I really wish I grew up in the 60s for that reason. Yeah, Parker was awesome. and his family just seems so cool. They all were very into baseball, and his dad played professional baseball, and so I think one of his brothers did as well. And Parker spent most of his early years playing baseball with his family and friends, and having that be the social activity that brought everyone together. Okay, so Frank in episode 15 talked about his war experience in Vietnam, and his plane went down, and that was a crazy experience that he was willing to share with us, and I'm really grateful he did. So Frank's episode taught me a lot, and it showed me how difficult that situation would have been, and how brave and amazing people are who serve our country. These people that serve our country are so brave and selfless, and really, we can't thank them enough. I can't imagine having to go through that and also live with that. So I feel incredibly lucky and thankful and grateful for those people who did sacrifice and serve. Frank was a radio disc jockey, and I actually got to visit him when he was doing that, probably 10 years ago. And this guy can do anything. He had a case in front of the Supreme Court and won that case. All the things that he's done in his life are very, very big and impressive, but he is a very humble man and very kind and loving, and has learned a lot throughout his life. And everything he had to say in that interview was very deep and meaningful. All right, Lorraine Gayette in episode 16 talked about her love for Colorado. Lorraine grew up on the East Coast and then made her way to Colorado, and she just loves Colorado. And I love Colorado as well, so we definitely got along. I thought it was interesting that she had to say kids these days have the weight of the world on their shoulders. So she kind of had the same impression that Jim did, that there's just a lot of pressure that these kids feel. And I just did a 70s episode that I'll get into later, but we did talk about society's subconscious messages and how I think things in the 60s, you had expectations, and maybe some of those might have been too much or incorrect, but now we're getting like 500 different messages sent to us each day through the media messages that we get. So scrolling through Instagram is, you're getting a different message from each post. And a lot of the time they're subconscious messages of how you should live or what you should do or how you should dress, and like a subconscious signal of what it means to be perfect or what it means to be cool or what it means to fit in. And back in the 60s, they had magazines and TV, but you were getting a few messages a day. You had expectations from your parents, from your school teachers, from people around you. But that's a lot easier to deal with and a lot less confusing and easier to break away from than having 500 different messages sent in one day. I do think this is true. I do think there's a lot of pressure and anxiety and just a lot going on for these kids and for us as adults now. All right, in episode 17, I got to talk with Lavelle Kirby, who is a hoot. He is a trickster, still is, and a prankster and a funny guy. He's a wild child. And I loved his stories about shooting off firecrackers, basically causing trouble, sand dune jumping, and he had a lot to say about farm life. So, his is just a bunch of stories about how he is a prankster. And also he's a tease while he's telling the stories. He likes to have fun. I like this guy because we need more people in life who just have a little fun and keep things light. And he keeps things light and entertaining. And I love a good quirky personality. Lorna is awesome. Oh, I loved episode 18 where Lorna brought on her husband, Craig, and they just went back and forth and talked about their life. They grew up together and then got married later on in life. That's a cool story right there. So she had lots of great things to say. It was really sweet when she teared up talking about the loyalty of her dog and when he died and how much, even to this day, probably 40, 50 years later, her dog is something she'll still cry over. I just like that. I like that relationship was so meaningful to her that it still tears her up. She is bold and very fun, and Lorna, there's no one like Lorna. And I really enjoyed that police ticket story. So if you haven't listened to it, Lorna is in a car with her friends and they're on a road trip, and all the garbage had been piling up and she needed it out of the car. So she put it in a bag, rolled down the window, tossed it out the window, and it hit a cop car. And of course they get pulled over. And I'll leave it there just in case you haven't heard the story. So I can't believe she did that. And I just love her for it. That is one of the best stories I've heard. And Lorna's just fun. And this was her quote. She's been told that they've never met anyone who can find joy as fast as you can, Lorna. And if you've ever met Lorna, that is true. So she's a great example of looking for the positive, very uplifting, and always making things fun and lighthearted. And lastly, Dana Copenhaver, episode 19, the one where I kind of messed up and forgot to record. Actually, I did record, it just didn't work out. But Dana also had a wonderful childhood and talked about driving around with friends and stopping to chat with other friends in cars, and then they would eat fries and Coke after school. And then she talked about how she'd put peanuts in her Coke, and that shocked me, but I need to try that. That's on my list this week. She talked about just spending a lot of time with family at sporting events, and her dad was the basketball coach and principal, and their family was close because they all supported each other in the community, and they spent a lot of time together through those big events, those sporting events. Overall, I feel like the 60s was a good sense of community. Of course, there were social issues, and I'm just not even going to get into that. I want to look at the positives of the 60s because I compare these eras for the difference in technology and social media and really nothing else at this point. But I think we can learn a lot in this aspect that the 60s was about family and spending time with your family and being in the community and spending time with those in your neighborhood and in your school, and getting together to dance, getting together to cause mayhem, to go on road trips, to go to sporting events. And I think that's one thing that is becoming more of a struggle because we're so isolated and so consumed by things that aren't directly in front of us. And back then, it was most important to be with the people that you love, be with the people around you, and do these activities and get excited about them and go to them and make it a regular thing. And that's just not in the cards these days. And it takes so much effort to make this happen because you have to get many people on board, and all the people are struggling with the same thing of, where does my time go? Does it go to my online community or does it go to my small community around me? Guys, it's been so wonderful. I'm sad to let the 60s go for now, but the 70s are going to be exciting. New colors, new photos, and a new world, a new era. And it's going to be great. And I'm really excited. So looking forward to that. And I will talk to you soon. Wait. You can't miss the embarrassing story of the week. No. Okay. It's that time. It's Steph with an F's embarrassing story of the week. All right, so this week's embarrassing story was last night, and I went and saw Little Women for the first time, and I should have seen this earlier because guess what? Little Women is now officially my favorite movie of all time. Yes, it reached the top. I can't believe it. I didn't think anything would reach the top. It's been years since something reached the top. I think it was 5 years ago when I decided what my favorite movie was, and it stayed the same. And I cried throughout the whole thing with my cousin. She cried too. And it was like a happy cry. Usually when I cry throughout the whole thing, I can't wait to get out of that movie theater. This was like a happy cry, and it was just so touching. And I grew up with 4 sisters, and I felt like I was watching my life, but in a different time period, because these women, fight like sisters. They all have very different personalities, and I could even see some of those personalities carry over to my life and my own siblings' personalities. So it was the happiest, most wholesome movie I have seen, and I can't believe it was made like that. And I loved the humor and everything about it. And so, I should get to the embarrassing part. The embarrassing part is that I was just sobbing, like happy sobbing in the movie theater. And I had to, secretly pull my sweater up and cover my nose and get the nasty gobs of crap that was now coming through my nose, because I'm just in a sad, happy state. And it's so awkward trying not to blow your nose in a movie theater and trying to hide the fact that you're sobbing from your cousin, who actually also is sobbing. You just don't know till the end when she also admits to it. So everyone else in the theater, I was trying to hide my uncontrollable emotions from everyone, and it's just awkward, and then you come out of the movie and your face is red and you look like you're distraught. And I really enjoyed it, and it's my favorite, and I hope I see it again so that I don't have to cry this time and I can fully enjoy it. But oh my goodness, guys, it was so good. That world felt like perfect, and my hope is to make my world now feel as perfect as that. I know it won't be that easy because I have a lot to deal with. We have a lot of distractions, and they didn't. Their lives were very simple. They were getting some messages, and life was very different. We're just flooded with information and flooded with messaging and pressures and all the things. And my goal is to make my life more simple and my messages less, and and control the things that are flooding into my home and into my space, so that I can live an enjoyable life and focus on the relationships like the Little Women did. I'm sure you guys have had enough. So I'm out. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time. And we're going to start the 70s, and I'm so excited. Bye.
If you came here for mental health help, please go visit your doctor. If you're looking for some mental health tips, Dr. Daniel Amen is someone I follow. I love what he has to say and offer. I think his website is brainhealthassessment.com, and he just has some awesome checklist items that go over brain health, habits that you should be doing to have better brain health. I want to say there's like 5 to 10 items, and if you have those, if you're working on those habits and trying to improve them to improve your brain health, you'll also improve your happiness level, because brain health equals mental health. So keep your brains happy and healthy, and check out Dr. Daniel Amen. This is not sponsored. I just really like what he has to say, and I think it's really beneficial. I think it can help a lot of people. It's actually very matter of fact, kind of obvious, but yeah, we neglect so many of these habits daily. And I do feel like, if you're feeling unhappy, that may be one of the reasons you're unhappy, because you're neglecting your brain health, which is also your mental health. And yeah, trying to improve these habits could really help. So check him out. If you have any stories from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, please get in contact with me. Let's chat. I want nothing more than to chat about the past. I want nothing more than to chat about the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. If you have any specific questions that I'm not asking that you would like to know about these eras while interviewing these people, please let me know. I would love some advice and I would love your input. So, what would you guys like to know?